to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Beatrice. I upload 3 times a week on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Sundays, and I would love it if you subscribe to this video, leave a like, and yeah, today we are going to be filming a chatty get ready with me. So yeah, let's get into this video. Right, so I'm going to start with some moisturizer. Right now I'm actually using baby lotion, and you might be wondering why, but because my skin has been so sensitive, I've decided to try baby lotion and see if that helps in any way, shape or form. And it has been helping. My skin's been a lot softer and less red unless I touch it, like right now. And yeah, so let that settle in a little bit because it's a bit thick. And yeah, one of the subjects I wanted to talk to you guys about today was actually a subject that actually pops up in my DMs quite a lot, and it is the difference between living in the UK versus living in Portugal. I'm just going to apply foundation while we're doing this. The L'Oreal Infallible foundation, 2 shades, because none of them match me properly right now, so we've got to mix 2. So yeah, it actually surprisingly pops up in my DMs a lot, considering I have lived longer in the UK. I have lived longer in the UK than I have in my home country of Portugal. It still surprisingly pops up in my DMs a lot, people asking me questions about which one I prefer and like would I ever go back, and it's a question that people actually ask me quite a lot. So I thought I'd make a video on it and just chat through my thoughts on living in the UK versus living in Portugal for me. So all this video is based on personal opinion. I've got nothing against people from Portugal, and I've got nothing against other people's opinions. This is just based on my thoughts and feelings and my opinions on what it's been like for me, and obviously my experiences of being Portuguese but growing up in the UK. So yeah, I'm from a small island, so I'm from a place called Madeira, which is on the Atlantic Ocean, and it's a island off of Portugal. So I moved to the UK when I was about 2 years old. So I moved to London with my mum and my dad. And we lived in London until I was about 13, 14. And then I moved to where I live now, which is southwest England, Bristol. But I moved here with my mum. My dad still lives in London. But I grew up in a place where there was a lot of Portuguese people around, and people that were from the same place or spoke like my home language of Portuguese. And I actually had a very Portuguese upbringing, even though I lived in the UK. A lot of English influences as well. But I feel like when you live in London, you get a lot of influences from all around the world growing up, because you just, like, you meet people from all over the place. So I feel like I'm a bit more like international, and I like, I don't know, I just feel like I understand different cultures and what they do, and like what they behave like, a bit better than what people would where I'm from. That's not to say anything like bad about like where I'm from. I go back every year and I love it. My friends and family are all there. But I just feel like it's a bit of a slower place. Like, I grew up in London. London's a bit like fast paced and like high intensity, and like you've got to have thick skin to live there. And moving to Bristol's a bit slower than London, I can say, but it's still faster than it is back home. So I feel like people always ask me questions about like UK versus Portugal, and I can't exactly give you the right answer because I feel like it would be unfair, since I haven't experienced living in Portugal as much as like I should to be able to give that answer, if that makes sense. I don't feel like I would be the best person to be able to give that answer, seeing as I moved to England when I was 2. So I've always like grown up like in London, and from you like knowing those influences. The next product I'm going to be using is a new product to me, which is the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop concealer, and I'm just going to try this out for the first time, and you can see my reaction live basically. Right, so I'm gonna start just under the eyes. Feel like I put as much as I would usually use with my other concealer, so yeah. So back onto the subject, I feel like I would be the wrong person to ask. I only go back in the summer, so I would only know what it's like there in the summer. And I feel like that's like not a good, like, what's the word? That's not a good representation of what it's like all year round. I've never been to school there, so I wouldn't know what school's like. I've never had to buy like stuff there. I mean, I do when I go on holiday, like food and stuff. Like, I realised that things like that are a bit cheaper, but I don't have to, I don't know, I don't notice it as much, so I really just can't explain to you what life there is like, because I've never experienced it. So I feel like I would be the wrong person to ask. I feel like that blended in really well. Is that just me? Should have done it before and after, shouldn't I? Yeah. People do ask me a lot as well, London versus Bristol. And there I can tell you, I'm a London girl at heart. I can see the good sides of Bristol, but it's just a bit slow for me because I grew up in London. I feel like I want a fast-paced life, and I feel like I constantly want to be busy and want to be doing something, and Bristol hasn't like been that kind of place for me. But I have learned to fit in, and Bristol has become like my home. I wouldn't swap it for anything. The fact that it's calm means it's a bit safer as well, and that is one of the key points for wanting. So yeah, I feel like I have adapted to living in Bristol now. I do still love London, and every time I get to go back I'm like so excited to like see the places I grew up. I don't go back often. Just gonna apply some. I don't get to go back often, as like I've now built a life here. Haven't been back in about a year now. Last time I went back, I think it was like the end of December, so it's like been a year now. But yeah, I feel like I've built a life for myself here now, so I don't feel like I want to go back as bad as like when I first moved here. But next I'm going to contour and blush with the Rimmel Kate Moss sculpting palette in 002 Coral Glow. Yeah. Another thing a lot of people ask me is another thing that a lot of people ask me is about my school life. I went to a lot of different schools. I was never just in one school my entire life. I went to 2 different primary schools, one more like mainstream, and the other one was a Catholic school. I'm just gonna switch up this brush for a bigger, fluffier brush. I feel like I would get a better bronze with the bigger brush. So yeah, so I went to 2 different primary schools, and I went to 2 different secondary schools, and by consequence that has made me actually live a lot of different experiences in school. I don't remember much about my first primary school. I just remember that it was very inclusive. It was in the heart of Westminster, and I went to that school, and I went to that school until I was in year 5, and then in year 5, which is when you're about I want to say when you're about 10, but I might be wrong, I can't really remember, but when you're around 10, that's when I moved to a different school that was closer to my house, and that school was a Catholic school. My parents being Catholic, they wanted me to go to a school that was religious, and we had to pray, and I think we prayed at least once or twice a day. I can't remember now, but I think once or twice a day we prayed, and I don't remember much about like my first primary school, but I do remember that the second school I went to was a lot smaller than my first one, and it was a lot more I don't know, a lot more calmer. I think the second school was. I'm just gonna do a little bit of eyeshadow using my Beauty Bay Origins palette. So yeah, I remember that my second primary school was a lot more, I made a lot more friends for life in that school, for sure. And I made a lot more memories there too. Memories that I like keep for life, and I really enjoyed my time at that school. But I think there's a bigger difference for sure between my secondary schools. My first secondary school was again in London, and it was a all-girls school, and that I went to that school till I was 13, and in year 9, and then I moved to Bristol, and I went to a sports college, which was a mixed school, and I hadn't been in school with boys since I was in primary school. So it had been 3 years since I was last in school with boys, and it was a shock to the system. Teenage boys are horrible, or can be horrible. I'm not going to say they're all horrible, but they can be very horrible. And it was traumatic, to say the least. Especially to like sit in class, and like it made it very difficult for me, for sure. But eventually I started having panic attacks and anxiety, and school just became worse for me. In general, I couldn't process it. A lot of the time I was at home, and it was just a lot harder for me to be able to just go to school, like physically go to school. Depression and anxiety does run in my history and my life in general. It's been a big part of my life. So but it all started when I moved to Bristol. I'm just filling in my eyebrows with the Tati Beauty Volume 1 palette with the colour Memory. So yeah. I feel like doing your eyebrows always takes a lot of concentration, or it does for me. And I always feel like I fast forward it in videos, because it just looks ridiculous, the faces I pull to concentrate. And the silence, like the amount of silence there is for me to just fill in a brow is ridiculous. See the difference? I think brows are like my favourite part to do. It really does shape your face. But yeah, so since then I literally hated school. I was always a good student in school. I always had good grades. I was always like in school on time, and that all just went down the drain when my mental health started getting worse because I didn't have the motivation to stay in school and to do well, which meant that I failed some of my GCSEs, but I still made it into college. But then I couldn't concentrate in college either, and I just ended up dropping out. I did 1 full year of college, but it was a repeat year. So what happens in a repeat year is when you have to like repeat the GCSEs you failed, because in my case I didn't have 5 GCSEs. That was C and above, or 4 and above now. I think now it's a level 4, and I had failed maths as well, and it meant that I had to repeat maths and then pick another subject to do as an extra GCSE. So I did maths for 3 months, and then I passed in November, which meant that I was only going to college for the extra GCSE, which I did media and film studies, and to say the least I hated it, but I did do it, and I did accomplish my 5 GCSEs that I needed plus maths, and yeah, I finished college in, I want to say March. I want to say March. And I then, around the same time, started working. I found myself a part-time job at McDonald's, and I started working there most days, like after school, so from 4, and I absolutely loved it because I felt like I was doing something productive towards my life. And I'm not gonna lie, I think when you're a teenager and you can see that like the more you work, the more income you get that motivation to keep doing it. So that's what I did. I used to work at least 5 days a week from 4 till 12, from 4 till midnight basically, until school came back in, and I was now doing 4 courses and working part-time, so I couldn't keep it up, and I quit school, which I don't regret because I loved working more than I did going to school, and it was always work over school anyway, so I'd never regretted not finishing school, and I don't think I regret it till now. Yeah, so my next, I think I'm just gonna put a lip gloss on today because my lips are very chapped and there's no point putting on lip liner. So I'm just gonna do this pout bomb from Revolution. So now that that's on, I'm just gonna finish by adding some highlighter again from the Rimmel palette to my cheekbones. And yeah, I feel like that's most of like my school life and work life. The concentration of putting highlighter on. Yeah, so that's most of my school life and my work life. So that brings us to the end of this video. Leave a like, comment down below if you've made it this far, comment this emoji here, and yeah, I will see you in my next video. Love you all, bye.